Now, Donald Trump has given the position of Secretary of Education to someone who believes in privatizing education. Great. Now, according to The Hill, Donald Trump is nominating Betsy DeVos for the position of Education Secretary. In a statement, Trump called DeVos brilliant and said, under her leadership, we will reform the U.S. education system and break the bureaucracy that is holding our children back so that we can deliver world-class education and school choice to all families. And I'm surprised I didn't see Bigley in there at all. So, good prepared statement by Donald Trump. Didn't involve Bigley or Big League or whatever. But the whole point is school vouchers. That's essentially what we're getting. School vouchers. Here we go. Yesterday we did a story on how Donald Trump was going to privatize toll roads. Roads and bridges and stuff by investing in so-called infrastructure. $137 billion would go to private investors to then put into different infrastructure projects that would eventually make them money. Well, here we go. Donald Trump is now putting Betsy DeVos in charge of the Department of Education to privatize our school system. So they're dismantling and selling off our government piece by piece, and they haven't even gotten into office yet. Jesus fucking Christ. Will somebody please think of the children?
Well, I mean, and let's talk about the principle here of the idea of taking education away as a public good. Because that's essentially what school vouchers and stuff like that do. That's not to say everything is all bad. I mean, not all charter schools are bad. I mean, some charter schools have done some great things. It's not all A or B. But the idea of privatizing education on a wide scale, taking away education as a public good, that is grossly undemocratic. And you're creating a big slippery slope of education being something only for the privileged. And we've been going that direction for a little while now. And it's not like widespread, but it's creeping up. I mean, colleges and universities are slowly becoming almost 4-year vacations for kids in some ways. And it's a very disturbing trend. And, if you kind of keep this Trump philosophy on stuff like education, it's going to get a lot worse. And there's nothing positive about that. For a democracy to work, you need a well-informed populace and an educated populace. And the idea of stripping away education as a public good is just, I mean, that's fascism. That's just dictionary fascism.
But Ron, I thought school choice is good. Think of the children. It makes kids smarter, don't you know? Actually, no, it doesn't. Here's the thing, right? One of the arguments is that, well, it helps take children out of poorly performing schools and puts them into better schools, and then they actually do better, right? Especially compared to our failing school system. Which, look, we've got a lot of problems with our education system, hands down. Especially the way we actually structure our classes and the incentives and the standardized tests. I realize all that, and I despise that, okay? I'm not exactly a huge proponent of Common Core, not because of the fact that we set standards, right? I think we should have some sort of standard, but I think that leads to more teaching for the test. And I don't like that. We should maybe take a look at the model Finland does. They don't have tests. They don't have all the bullshit that we have. It's more of a freer learning environment. And I think, that fosters creativity. And I think you should teach problem solving, all that stuff that we don't get taught. Because right now, our education system is stuck in the 1960s. And I really believe that what we're teaching kids to do today is basically to run and do jobs, run machines, that don't exist anymore. Okay, you're doing rote memorization. You're basically learning how to follow directions to the letter, and not given the chance to critically think about things and to problem solve. And I think that's hurting our future generations, because you're teaching them to do jobs that no longer exist, that have now been taken over by robots completely and or outsourced to lower wage countries. And we're still teaching people how to do this. And you wonder why everybody's so completely 100% unprepared for college, where you actually do have to critically think. And also, we don't spend enough time teaching people how to do skilled trades as well, like welding. Like, that's also something that needs to be, done. I worked a lot around a lot of welders. I welded myself. I caught myself on fire while welding. I wasn't very good at it. So
clearly, yeah.
No, clearly, when you catch yourself on fire, if you catch
yourself on fire, not your thing.
No, my coworker said, if you catch yourself on fire, I'm not going to tell you. I said, okay, that's fine. Boy, it's getting a little hot in here.
Back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was wearing one of those big welding jackets, so that's what I caught on fire. But still, not fun. Not fun to be on fire. Anyway, I do believe that we should also allow kids to do skilled trades, because not everybody's cut out for college. And we've also failed on that, because we're herding everybody into college, and not everybody belongs there, because you do need people to weld. You do need people to do, skilled trades. But as I said, we've got all sorts of problems with the education system as it is. Privatizing it makes it worse, not better. In fact, according to Politico, in Milwaukee, 13% of voucher students scored proficient in math, and 11% just barely made the bar in reading. Ooh. Now, that's worse on both counts than students in the city's public schools. Now, in Cleveland, voucher students in most grades performed worse than their peers in public schools in math, though they did do better in reading. So, hey, that's a positive, right? They're better at reading. Great. Okay. At least they did better in something, right? New Orleans, voucher students who struggled academically haven't advanced to grade level work any faster over the past 2 years of this study than students in the public schools, many of which are rated D or F. Ooh. So these schools are rated terribly, and these some of these voucher students were doing even worse than that. Ouch. So that's bad. In Louisiana, many of the most popular private schools for voucher students posted terrible scores in math, reading, science, and social studies, with fewer than half of their voucher students achieving even basic proficiency, and even fewer than 2% demonstrating mastery. Now, 7 of these schools in Louisiana did so badly that State Superintendent John White barred them from accepting new voucher students, though the state did agree to keep paying those the tuition for those 200 voucher students if they chose to continue staying in that school. So they were still getting federal money, even though they were barred because they did so poorly. And that is what I'm afraid is going to happen on a national level. A lot of our tax money is going to end up going to these failing private schools. And the students will end up doing worse than they already would have done in our shitty schools, our shitty public schools. So if you want to talk about waste, well, there's your waste. Now, look, why do they do so bad? Why are these scores so fucking awful? Well, it's because private schools can teach kids bullshit and get away with it. For example, religion, creationism. That's allowed in these schools where you now have federal money flowing into it. In fact, Zach Copeland, who is a student activist, he found that more than 300 voucher schools across the United States teach the biblical story of creation as science. Some of them also instruct children that the world is only several thousand years old, and they use textbooks describing the Loch Ness Monster as a dinosaur that is still alive.
Wow.
Fucking Loch Ness Monster, dude. Oh, and parents at one such school in Louisiana also received a newsletter calling secular scientists, quote, sinful men. They're sinful because they're scientists. Is it any wonder why these students tend to suck at math and science? Because they're being taught that the Loch Ness Monster is a fucking dinosaur, and that probably Jesus ended up using him as some sort of mount.
Yeah, he used to ride him around.
It was an
That
epic
was
drop from a
at the
from
time the Loch Ness monster was smaller. That's why in the Bible they say it's a donkey,
yeah.
but we know what it really was.
No, what it
It's
was,
really baby Loch Ness.
it was a drop from an epic boss. When Jesus fought the devil, that's what dropped.
Nice.
No, this is the kind of shit somebody like Betsy DeVos wants to bring to the national stage. And now she's going to have the power to do it. And that's going to take funding from public schools, which desperately need it at this point, and funnel it into bullshit, into crap. So that's what's going to happen.
Just to kind of clarify here, not all private schools are bad. Not all private schools fall.
The ones
under
that teach this crap
you're
are.
Describing. Well, yeah. Oh, no, well, absolutely. But I'm saying not all private schools do that. A lot don't.
Right, but the problem is, Ron,
the principle remains is that you need a strong foundation in a public school system because education is a public good. And if families choose to send their children to private schools, that's fine. That's a personal choice. But that doesn't mean that society as a whole doesn't have an obligation to the public school system in their communities. They do. So that's why I'm against the voucher thing or anything like that, where it takes funds away from strengthening public education.
Yeah, if you want to stick your kid into a school that teaches them that fucking Loch Ness monster, was a Jesus mount, okay, good for you, right? You want your kid stupid? Go ahead and send them there. I don't care.
Sure.
I just don't want tax money going to that.
Right.
And that's the problem with these vouchers.
I agree with you 110% there.
Yeah. And look, I'm not saying that all private schools are bad. The thing about private schools, though, is that there is no standard.
Right.
There's no standard.
That's true.
And so you can teach whatever you want. And that makes people stupid. And stupid people shouldn't be in charge of things. And that's unfortunately what we're going to do. These people are not being taught facts. They're not being taught logic. They're not being taught reason. They're not being taught how to critically think. And they're going to come up to be the next generation that is supposed to be leaders in this world. That's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. And so that's why I'm against these things. That's why I am for actual real school reform, to make sure that we actually have a better education system that does teach facts, logic, and reason, and not bullshit.
Well, I totally agree with you there. I mean, I'm just saying, you can't paint all private schools with that one big brush stroke.
But I'm not.
There's a lot. There's art schools. There's certain private schools that are wonderful private schools. And yes, there are different standards, which is why, there shouldn't be federal money going into that, or it should be very heavily regulated. And of course, a strong public school system should come first. That's why it is a public school system. There is the obligation for federal money there, as there should be.
Yeah. So look, I'm just being incredibly hyperbolic and very harsh on private schools, and I'm sure there are a lot of good ones, but I'm not. If you're a good one, then you're exempt from this rant. Okay.
No, I gotcha. I gotcha. It's just, and the stuff that you're saying certainly does exist, and I think that's bad. And those are just judgment calls to make. I mean, I have my personal philosophies on a lot of stuff going on in education that I know not all people agree with. I mean, I'm against homeschooling, for instance. I although there are exceptions to every rule, I think generally that is very unhealthy for a child. But I know that's kind of on me. I can't really a lot of people disagree with that, would argue with me on that. But I do kind of feel that way. But, I think the main principle here, it's not so much, these private schools are bad, these private schools aren't bad. It's that, education is a public good. There is a community obligation to a strong public school system. And when you have these vouchers and stuff like that going on, it kind of whittles away at that. And it gets away from that democratic principle and into this, privatization bullshit. That is very toxic for any society that would be healthy.
Yeah, and look, the point that I want to end on too is the reason that they do this privatization, and I don't think it's for the benefit of students. I really don't. I really think that it's, look, you remember like George Carlin, right? Basically, the Republicans, what they want out of education is to teach people to just be smart enough to run the machines, right? And do whatever kind of bullshit work needs to get done, and just dumb enough not to complain. And that's what this is all about. And I think
no child left behind. I mean,
right. And yeah, I think that with this pick, I mean, we've already seen the, over the last, 20, 30 years, the dumbing down of America. And I think what this pick is the culmination of that, where they can finally finish the dumbing down of America thanks to Donald Trump. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, go to our Patreon page and become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation.